Good afternoon. It's Wednesday today, February the 19th. Got an update on some data that I took a look at from the cruise ship in Japan that's pretty much locked down full of passengers that were unlucky enough to be in contact with the COVID-19. We've heard every day of the number of passengers that have been confirmed with the COVID-19 is increasing. But I've got some really not new news. I'm just going to take a look at what's been given to us. I want to show you something. I'm going to have to give a quick primer on how to read graphs, but we'll keep that simple. Here goes. On the Wikipedia site for this cruise ship, the Princess cruise ship, I found the data that gives you the number of cases detected and the number of passengers that had been tested at that point. This is on a linear scale. We switch to a log scale and you see that they line up quite well, and that's telling you that this thing is growing at an exponential rate. But when instead of taking the number of total passengers that were tested, we switch to the number of passengers that were tested each day, you get this chart, and you notice that they plot almost identically on top of each other. This is a very interesting point of fact. Okay then, to clear this up a little bit, we're going to go over this one time. The graph, I'll go ahead and put them up so that you can see them. The graph that shows the total passengers tested on the linear scale. As you can see, each day they add to the number of people found. So if you were found on day one, you're counted the whole way through. If you were counted on the last day, then you only appear as part of that data point. Now, since there were obviously over 3,000, I think it was close to 4,000 people on that ship. That is a lot of people in a very tight space. Now, I realize those ships are huge, but they're packed in there pretty tight, especially for this situation. So you look at that linear scale, and that I guess it's not terribly surprising, but note that the number of people that have contracted the virus, or at least detected, goes up. And this is going, by the way, you can see it on the bottom. It's from February the 5th is when they first tested people on the ship, and they got 10. Now, if you go back a couple days before that, they had a report that someone had gotten off the ship that had later on contracted the virus. That's what got them started looking. So it basically started at 10. And on that day, they had tested 31 people, and 10 of them had it. What does that tell you? They took everybody that looked at all sick or was complaining of anything, rounded up all 31 of them, tested them, and 10 of them showed positive. The next day, February 6th, they tested 102 people. That's total. 71 people were tested on the second day. Now you got 102 people tested total, but you doubled it. You went from 10 to 20 people that showed up positive, but you have 100 tested. And it goes forward, and you start to notice that it's somewhere between a third to a fifth of the total people tested, are the total people that have contracted the virus. And you can get that on just about any day. So however many people they tested, a third to a fifth of them, of the total, over that period of time, a third to a fifth of them turned out to actually have it. So that's telling you that at least in the earlier days, they're only testing people that appear sick. But then later on, they start, whether it's availability of tests or whatever, They obviously start testing more people. But let's go ahead and switch to that log scale. Now, this is still talking totals, total cases and total people tested. And you see that on a log scale, you've got a bump on the third day, which is third day in this series, which is February 7th. By the way, they apparently didn't test anybody on the 11th or the 16th. Who knows why? Ran out of kits. I don't know. There was nobody there on shift to do it. I don't know. But this doesn't seem to have affected the line any. I.e., the virus itself probably is just doing its thing, chomping away, and they're catching who they catch. So these people are probably already symptomatic, which means whenever they say, all right, as of today, there's 279 people, which would have been on February 8th, that's 279 people that have tested positive out of the people that they selected. I'm sorry, I said 279. 64 people tested positive out of the 279 that were tested as of February 8th. So, again, they've rounded them up. Said anybody that's sick, we're going to test you first. It's, for some reason, they tested a lot more, how shall I put this? Not more people, but a more increasing percentage in the earlier days. Well, that can only go on for so long. You'll run out of people. And as you can see, this curve would do that rather quickly because, as it turns out, that by the time you get to day the 19th, you've tested 3,000 people on a ship that only had 4,000 people on it, and a whole bunch of them have left already. So, pretty much tested everybody by now. And what we're saying is it looks like about 20% of them showed signs of it. In other words, tested positive. The fact that you've contracted it does not mean you will test positive. You might start testing positive later. So there are an awful lot of people that are going to show up later with this disease after they get off, which is why they're going to quarantine them for, I believe, 14 days. But I think you're going to find that number going up too. Probably switch it to 21, then they'll switch it to 28. They'll do whatever they need to do. I get that. But this third graph, where I've left the total number of cases in red, but in blue, what I've done is plotted, still on the log scale, the number of people tested that particular day. And it's interesting that as this thing goes out a few days, it starts tracking almost identically. The number of people tested that day equals the number of people total, very closely, the total number of cases. I'm wondering if they were testing people more than once. But as you can see, that in close quarters, this thing doesn't double every few days. It appears to go up by a power of 10 every 10 days, as it turns out, just the way it worked out. So in other words, you go from roughly 10 cases to roughly 100 cases from February 5th to February 10th. Now I realize that's only 5 days. But when you go further out, then you go from 60 cases to 600 cases. You're talking about the period from February 8th to February 18th or 19th. So in 10 days, roughly, the number of cases has multiplied by 10. So you've got a doubling that has occurred. Let's keep in mind, it's all logarithmic. So when you're doubling, you got 10, let's call it 1. You go to 2, 4, 8, 16. So between 8 and 16, you got this power of 10. So apparently in 1, the 2, 4, the second day, 8, about 3, a little over 3 doublings in 10 days. Well, that's doubling every 3 days. That's scary. You double every 3 days for 2 months, and I think you will have infected the entire world. I think we could calculate that. If it takes 10 days to go a power of 10 higher, and you start out with 10 people, every 10 days it goes up another 0. So you go from 10 to 100 to 1,000 every 10 days. In 60 days, that's 6 zeros after 10, which is billions. Billions. It's in 2 months. Now, just like this, what happens is anything, and I think you'll find that if this data continues, today's the 19th, this data goes until the 19th. And I think what you're going to find is, well, obviously it tapers off because you can't infect more people than are on the ship. So the curve is always going to round off at the top. There are several things that can round it off. We're all hoping that as it warms up a little bit, this thing will taper off and go down to practically nothing, as many viruses do. We don't know that that's going to happen, but we definitely can be praying that that occurs. Now, I'd pray for a lot stronger than that, but that's kind of, it's in place. Let's hope that let's just pray. Lord, thank you for the knowledge and the wisdom, and I thank you for our leaders, Lord, because I'm going to tell you what, I would not want to be one right now. This is very, very hard to deal with. I'm believing, now that I've looked at this data, that the closer you pack people together, the higher the exponential. So in other words, you put them on a cruise ship, it doubles every 3 days. You put them in the city of Wuhan, and it doubles every 5 to 7 days. Maybe if you put them out in the country, it might double every 20 or 30 days. You put them in a remote place with one person every couple of miles, it might just peter out completely. In other words, the curve that's going to degrade it at the top becomes greater than the climb itself, so the thing will just burn out. So basically what you have to do is spread people out. This number R naught that they're trying to calculate, you can't do it. You can give it a number if you want to. It's going to be based on something. A city population, a country population, a population that understands well, none of us understand what's going on, has some idea that washing their hands and not touching each other and sanitizing surfaces and what have you is important. And they realize that when they don't do that, people die, and when they do that, less people die. That'll help. That'll reduce that R naught number, and the distance between people will reduce that R naught number. I really believe that the cruise ship would have been best emptied, put the people into isolation for whatever period is appropriate. But that was not done, nor were things done immediately in China. But before we get too fast to condemn the Chinese leaders, for things that we've watched them do, it's not that they don't try to hide things or make themselves look good, but then we kind of all do that. They kind of do it a little worse. Sometimes I wonder about that. Our politicians aren't exactly lily whites. Matter of fact, I'm going to put out another video on that one. I think we have a wonderful president. We're very blessed to have him. And I think he's doing the best job he knows how to do. But there's no man that's perfect. So we got to back him because it's all we got. But I wanted to put this data out right now. R naught is determined by proximity. That's probably true of every virus. I mean, you catch a cold from people in your house, you go to daycare, the kids all get it. I mean, this isn't rocket science. On the other hand, it's coming to a neighborhood near you. It may already be there. So protect yourself, protect your family, stay clean, stay prayed up. There's only one way out of this. That's salvation. You got your choice. You already know what you need to do. I'm going to ask you right now to go ahead and take this moment and ask the Lord to forgive you. Ask Him to take His place in your life. He's not going to take control of your life. That's up to you. But He will forgive you, and He will cleanse your sins, and He will guarantee that you cannot be grasped from His hand. Yes, we're all going to die. One way or the other, it's all going to end. However, what happens after here, very important. I know it, you know it. We can talk more about it later. But right now, be safe. Proximity, don't shake hands. Don't shake hands with strangers. Don't do anything with strangers. Nod, be polite, offer an elbow tap if you must. Don't touch surfaces that other people have touched. It's a war. It's on. Come on, Army. Let's go. It's time to get up and fight this war. Racks out.